Sarah Mitchell sat alone in the cafeteria of Dover High School, picking at her lunch tray. It was her third day at the school, and she still hadn't made a single friend. Moving to this small Delaware town had been harder than she expected. At 17, Sarah had already lived in 6 different states. Her mother's military career had taken them from coast to coast, but this was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be home, at least for a while. Her mom had retired from the Navy just 3 months ago, and they'd settled in Dover to be near family. "Is anyone sitting here?" a girl with blonde hair asked, gesturing to the empty seats at Sarah's table. Sarah looked up hopeful. "No, please sit down." The girl sat, followed by 3 of her friends. "I'm Jessica," she said. "You're new, right?" "Yeah, just moved here last week. I'm Sarah." "Where'd you move from?" another girl asked. "Virginia Beach. Before that, we were in California, and before that." "You move around a lot," Jessica interrupted. Sarah nodded. "My mom was in the military. We went wherever she was stationed." "Oh, cool. What did your dad do?" Jessica asked. Sarah's face fell slightly. "I don't have a dad. I mean, I never knew him. It's always been just me and my mom." The girls exchanged glances. "So your mom was in the army?" one of them asked. "No, the Navy," Sarah said, her voice filling with pride. "She was a Navy SEAL." The table went quiet. Then Jessica started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a loud, mocking laugh that drew attention from nearby tables. "A Navy SEAL. Yeah, right," Jessica said, rolling her eyes. Sarah's cheeks burned. She served for 22 years. "Honey, women can't be Navy SEALs," Jessica said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Everyone knows that. Why are you lying?" "I'm not lying," Sarah insisted, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "My mom was one of the first women to—" "This is so sad," another girl interrupted, "making up stories to seem interesting. My dad actually served, and he told me women aren't allowed in the SEALs. They're not strong enough." Sarah felt tears prickling at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd learned from her mother never to show weakness in front of bullies. "Your dad is wrong," she said quietly but firmly. Jessica stood up and her friends followed. "Come on, girls, I don't want to sit with a liar." She looked down at Sarah. "You should be ashamed making up stories about the military. That's disrespectful to real soldiers." As they walked away, Sarah heard them laughing and whispering. Other students were staring now. She could feel their eyes on her, judging her, thinking she was a fraud. The rest of the day was torture. In history class, Jessica made sure to sit right behind her. "Hey, Sarah," she whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "Maybe your mom was a Navy SEAL in the movies. Was she in a superhero film?" Laughter rippled through the classroom. The teacher, Mr. Peterson, looked up but didn't say anything. He just shook his head and went back to writing on the board. By the time Sarah got home, she was exhausted. Her mother was in the kitchen, still unpacking boxes. Commander Jennifer Mitchell looked up and smiled, but her expression quickly changed when she saw her daughter's face. "Rough day?" she asked gently. Sarah dropped her backpack and slumped into a chair. "They didn't believe me, Mom. When I told them about you, about what you did, they laughed at me. They called me a liar." Jennifer set down the box she was holding and sat across from her daughter. Her weathered hands, scarred from years of training and combat, reached across the table to hold Sarah's. "I know, baby, I'm sorry." "Why don't they know? Why doesn't anyone know that women can be SEALs now?" Sarah's voice cracked with frustration. "Because it's still new," Jennifer said softly. "The program only opened to women a few years ago. Most people haven't caught up yet. They still think of the old rules." "Can't you come to school? Can't you tell them?" Jennifer sighed. "Would that help, or would it make things worse for you?" Sarah didn't answer. She knew her mother was right. Having her mom swoop in to defend her would only make her seem weaker. "I taught you to be strong," Jennifer said. "Not because life is easy, but because it's hard, especially for people like us. You show them who you are through your actions, not your words. But that night, as Sarah lay in bed, she wondered how she could possibly prove herself to people who had already decided she was a liar. 2 weeks had passed, and things hadn't improved. Jessica and her friends had made it their mission to make Sarah's life miserable. They'd spread the story all over school. Now everyone knew Sarah as that girl who lies about her mom. In the hallways, students would make comments as she walked by. "Hey Sarah, is your mom also an astronaut?" Or "My mom is the president." No, really. Sarah kept her head down and stayed quiet, just like her mother had taught her. But it hurt. Every single day it hurt. Then came the announcement that changed everything. "Attention, students," Principal Harris said over the loudspeaker during homeroom. "This year's Veterans Day Assembly will be special. We're asking each student to interview a veteran family member and present their story. This project will count for 20% of your history grade. The best presentation will be featured as the keynote during our assembly next month." Sarah's heart started racing. This was it. This was her chance. That evening, she approached her mother carefully. Jennifer was in the garage, working on organizing her military gear. Shadow boxes, medals, photographs, and uniforms were spread across a work table. "Mom, can I interview you for my school project?" Jennifer looked up, studying her daughter's face. "Is this about proving yourself to those kids?" "It's about telling the truth," Sarah said. "About showing them who you really are, who we really are. Please, Mom, I need to do this." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. She picked up a photo from the table. It showed her in full combat gear, face painted, standing with her SEAL team in some desert location Sarah didn't recognize. "You understand that if I do this, if I let you share my story, some people still won't believe it. Some people don't want to believe it." "I know," Sarah said, "but I have to try." Jennifer nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this right. You ask me real questions and I'll give you real answers, nothing held back. You'll hear things that might be hard to hear. Deal?" "Deal." Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah interviewed her mother every evening. She learned things she'd never known, things her mother had protected her from for years. Jennifer told her about the 18-month training program, the hardest thing she'd ever endured. She described carrying telephone poles in freezing water, running miles through sand with boats on their heads, and the moment she thought she might actually die during Hell Week. "They wanted us to quit," Jennifer explained, her eyes distant with memory. "Not because they were cruel, but because being a SEAL means facing situations where quitting isn't an option. If you can quit in training, you'll quit in combat. And in combat, that gets people killed." She told Sarah about the doubters, the male teammates who didn't want women in their units. "Some of them came around when they saw I could carry my weight. Others never did. But I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to serve my country." Sarah recorded everything on her phone. She collected photos, documents, and official letters. She found her mother's Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration for valor, tucked away in a box like it was nothing special. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about this?" Sarah asked, holding the medal carefully. Jennifer shrugged. "Medals don't make you a hero, Sarah. Doing the right thing when it's hard, when you're scared, when no one's watching, that's what makes you a hero. I did my job, that's all." Sarah also learned about the mission that ended her mother's career. Jennifer had been injured during a classified operation, taking shrapnel in her left leg while protecting her team. She'd received the Navy Cross for her actions that day, but she'd also received a medical discharge. "Do you regret it?" Sarah asked. "Never," Jennifer said firmly. "I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Those men came home to their families because of what I did. That's worth any price." As Sarah compiled her presentation, she felt something growing inside her. Not just pride in her mother, but pride in herself. She was the daughter of a hero, and she wasn't going to hide that anymore. The night before presentations began, Sarah practiced in front of her bathroom mirror. Her hands shook and her voice wavered. She was terrified. But she'd learned from the best. Navy SEALs don't quit just because they're scared. The next morning, Sarah walked into school with her head held high, carrying a thumb drive with her presentation and a box of materials. Students still whispered as she passed, but she didn't care anymore. When she reached her locker, she found the word liar written in permanent marker across the front. Jessica and her friends were watching from down the hall, smirking. Sarah looked at the graffiti, then at Jessica. She smiled, a calm, confident smile that made Jessica's smirk falter. "See you in history class," Sarah said clearly. The battle was about to begin, but this time Sarah was ready. Part 3: The Presentation. The presentations began on a Monday. Mr. Peterson had arranged for students to present in alphabetical order, which meant Sarah would go near the end of the week. She watched as her classmates presented their projects. Most were simple PowerPoint slides with basic information. Jessica went on Tuesday, presenting about her grandfather who had served in Vietnam. It was a good presentation, well-researched and respectful. Sarah even learned something about the war she hadn't known before. When Jessica finished, the class applauded. Mr. Peterson nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Jessica. Your grandfather sounds like a remarkable man." Jessica beamed, then glanced back at Sarah with a look that clearly said, "Beat that." Wednesday came and went. Thursday arrived. Sarah's hands were sweating as she waited for her turn. There were only 3 students presenting before her. Finally, Mr. Peterson called her name. "Sarah Mitchell, you're up." The room went quiet. Students exchanged knowing looks. They were waiting for her to embarrass herself, to expose her lies once and for all. Sarah walked to the front of the room with her laptop and the box of materials. She connected to the projector with steady hands, even though her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The first slide appeared. It was a photo of Jennifer Mitchell in her dress Navy uniform, wearing her SEAL Trident pin. The image was official, taken for her retirement ceremony. "This is my mother, Commander Jennifer Mitchell, United States Navy, retired," Sarah began. Her voice was clear and strong. She served for 22 years as a naval special warfare operator. Most people know this job by another name, Navy SEAL. She heard whispers start immediately. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Jessica lean over to whisper to her friend. "I know what some of you are thinking," Sarah continued, looking directly at Jessica. "You're thinking this can't be true. Women can't be Navy SEALs. Everyone knows that." The room was completely silent now. "You're right to think that, or at least you would have been right 6 years ago. Until 2016, the SEAL program was closed to women. But in that year, the Department of Defense opened all combat positions to women who could meet the standards. Not lower standards, not easier standards, the exact same standards as the men." Sarah clicked to the next slide. It showed a news article from 2016 about the policy change. Then another from 2020 about the first woman to pass SEAL training. "My mother wasn't the first woman to become a SEAL, but she was in the first class that accepted women. Out of 18 women who attempted the program, only 2 graduated. My mom was one of them." Click. The next slide showed Jennifer during Hell Week, covered in mud, carrying a boat over her head alongside her teammates. This is Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous training with a maximum of 4 hours of sleep total. Candidates run more than 200 miles, do physical training for more than 20 hours per day in freezing water, and face constant mental pressure designed to make them quit. 80% of candidates don't make it through Hell Week. Sarah could see she had their attention now. Even Jessica had stopped whispering. "My mom completed Hell Week. Then she completed the rest of the training, another year of advanced combat preparation, including diving, parachuting, and weapons training. She earned her Trident." Click. A photo of Jennifer receiving her Trident pin. the official insignia of the SEALs. For the next 15 minutes, Sarah walked the class through her mother's career. She showed them photos from deployments, though she couldn't say where most were taken because they were classified. She read excerpts from commendation letters written by Jennifer's commanding officers. Then she reached the hardest part of the presentation. In 2023, my mother was deployed on a classified mission in the Middle East. Her team came under heavy fire. During the engagement, she realized that two of her teammates were trapped in a building that was about to be overrun by enemy forces. Sarah's voice wavered slightly, but she pushed through. My mother made a choice. She went back for them. She held off the enemy while her teammates escaped, and she took shrapnel from a grenade in the process. She was airlifted out with severe injuries to her left leg. Click, the next slide showed the Navy Cross Medal. For her actions that day, my mother was awarded the Navy Cross. It's the second highest military decoration for valor, just below the Medal of Honor. It's rarely given, and even more rarely given to women, because until recently, women couldn't serve in the combat roles that would earn it. Sarah picked up the actual medal from her box and held it up. The bronze cross gleamed under the classroom lights. The room was absolutely silent. No one was whispering now. No one was smirking. The men my mother saved that day went home to their families. One of them has a daughter my age. One has a son who just started kindergarten. They're alive because my mother was willing to sacrifice herself. Sarah set the medal down gently on Mr. Peterson's desk and returned to her presentation. My mother received a medical discharge because of her injuries. She has permanent nerve damage in her left leg and walks with a slight limp. You might not notice it unless you're looking for it, but she feels it every day. Click. The next slide showed a more recent photo of Jennifer in civilian clothes, standing in front of a Navy memorial. When I told some of you that my mother was a Navy SEAL, you didn't believe me. You called me a liar. You laughed at me. And I understand why. Sarah's voice remained steady, but there was steel in it now. You didn't know that the world had changed. You didn't know that women could do these things now, but not knowing isn't an excuse for cruelty. She saw Jessica shift uncomfortably in her seat. My mother taught me that a SEAL's greatest strength isn't physical. It's mental. It's the ability to face adversity, to push through pain, to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. She taught me that by example. Sarah clicked to her final slide. It was a quote from Admiral William McRaven, a famous Navy SEAL. If you want to change the world, start by making your bed. Admiral McRaven said this because he believed that small acts of discipline lead to bigger ones, that doing hard things makes you stronger. My mother lived by this principle every day of her military career, and she lives by it now. She taught me to live by it too. Sarah closed her laptop. When I was being bullied these past few weeks, my mom told me not to fight back with anger. She told me to fight back with truth. So that's what I'm doing today. This is the truth about my mother. This is the truth about what women can do when given the chance. And this is the truth about who I am. I'm the daughter of a hero, and I'm proud of it. She gathered her materials and walked back to her seat. The silence in the room was deafening. Then, from the back of the classroom, someone started clapping. It was Marcus, the quiet kid who sat in the corner and never talked to anyone. He stood up as he clapped. Another student joined in. Then another. Within seconds, the entire class was on their feet applauding. Even Mr. Peterson was standing, his eyes misty. Everyone except Jessica and her two closest friends. When the applause finally died down, Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. Thank you, Sarah, that was extraordinary. Class, that's what a real presentation looks like. That's what courage looks like. Jessica's hand shot up. Mr. Peterson, how do we even know this is real? Anyone can show pictures and make up stories. Before Mr. Peterson could respond, Sarah spoke up. You're right, Jessica. You should verify things before you believe them. That's why I brought documentation. She walked back to the front and opened her box. Inside were official Navy documents, her mother's discharge papers, copies of commendation letters on official letterhead, and newspaper clippings from military publications. You can look at any of this. You can call the Navy's personnel office if you want. My mother's service record is partially declassified now that she's retired. Or, Sarah pulled out her phone. I can call her right now and you can ask her yourself. That won't be necessary, Mr. Peterson said quickly. Jessica, your comment was inappropriate. Sarah has provided more than enough evidence. But Jessica wasn't done. Her face was red now, whether from embarrassment or anger, Sarah couldn't tell. This is such a setup. You probably paid someone to make fake documents. Jessica Rodriguez, that's enough. Mr. Peterson's voice was sharp. You owe Sarah an apology. For what? For not believing her crazy story. For being realistic. For bullying her, Mr. Peterson said firmly. For writing on her locker. For spreading rumors about her. For making her life miserable because you couldn't accept that you might be wrong about something. Jessica's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I have cameras in the hallways, Jessica. Did you think we didn't see you? The room went completely still. Jessica looked around at her friends, but they wouldn't meet her eyes. Principal Harris and I have already discussed your behavior, Mr. Peterson continued. We were waiting to see if you'd do the right thing and apologize on your own. Clearly, that was too much to hope for. Sarah felt no satisfaction in watching Jessica squirm. If anything, she felt sad. Her mother had taught her that real strength wasn't about defeating enemies, it was about rising above them. Mr. Peterson, Sarah said quietly, it's okay. Jessica was wrong, but I understand why she reacted the way she did. People fear what they don't understand. They attack what threatens their view of the world. She looked at Jessica directly. My mom being a SEAL doesn't take anything away from your grandfather's service. His sacrifice was real too. There's room to honor both of them. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, but Sarah didn't know if they were tears of shame or anger. The bell rang, and students began filing out. Several stopped by Sarah's desk to tell her how amazing her presentation was. Marcus gave her a shy thumbs up. As Sarah packed up her materials, Mr. Peterson approached her. Sarah, I need to apologize too. I saw what was happening to you these past weeks, and I didn't do enough to stop it. That was wrong of me. Thank you, Sarah said simply. I'd like to recommend your presentation as the keynote for the Veterans Day Assembly. Would that be all right with you? Sarah thought about it. Only if my mom agrees to come. I'll call her myself, Mr. Peterson promised. As Sarah walked out of the classroom, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The truth was out now. She'd done what her mother taught her to do. She'd fought back with honor. The next 3 weeks passed quickly. Sarah's presentation became the talk of the school. The story spread beyond Dover High. Local news stations called asking for interviews. A veterans organization reached out, wanting to honor Jennifer at an event. Jennifer politely declined most of the attention. I didn't do my job for recognition, she told Sarah. I did it because it needed to be done. But she agreed to attend the Veterans Day Assembly. If it helps even one young woman believe she can do hard things, it's worth it. The day of the assembly arrived. The entire school packed into the gymnasium, students, teachers, and invited guests, including local veterans and family members. Sarah sat in the front row with the other students whose projects had been selected for recognition. Jessica was there too, 3 seats away. They hadn't spoken since that day in class. Jessica had received a 3-day suspension for the vandalism and bullying, and while she'd submitted a written apology, she'd never apologized in person. Principal Harris opened the ceremony with a speech about the importance of honoring veterans. Then Mr. Peterson took the stage to introduce the student presentations. 3 students presented before Sarah. Each told moving stories of parents, grandparents, or relatives who had served. The audience applauded respectfully after each one. Then it was Sarah's turn. She walked to the podium, and her mother wheeled in a presentation board with photos and documents. Jennifer had dressed in her full navy dress uniform for the occasion, her medals gleaming on her chest. The slight limp Sarah had mentioned was barely noticeable, but Sarah knew her mother was in pain from standing so long. Sarah began her presentation much as she had in class, but this time she added more. She talked about what it meant to be the child of a service member, about the sacrifices families make, about moving every few years and never having a permanent home. "People thank my mother for her service," Sarah said, "but no one thanks me for mine, and that's okay, because being her daughter taught me that some things are bigger than ourselves, some causes are worth sacrificing for." Jennifer stood beside the presentation board at attention, her eyes forward, but Sarah could see the emotion on her mother's face. Then Sarah invited her mother to say a few words. Jennifer approached the microphone. She was used to briefing admirals and generals, but speaking to a high school gymnasium made her nervous. Sarah could tell. "Thank you for having me," Jennifer began. "I don't usually talk about my service. SEALs are trained to work in silence, to do our jobs without recognition. But my daughter asked me to come today and I couldn't refuse her. I never could." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. "When I joined the Navy, women couldn't serve in combat roles. I spent years working in other positions, knowing I could do more if given the chance. When the door finally opened, I walked through it, not because I wanted to prove something, but because it was right." Jennifer paused, looking out at the sea of young faces. The hardest part wasn't the physical training. It wasn't the deployments or the danger. It was the people who told me I didn't belong, the teammates who didn't want me there, the strangers who said I was taking a spot from a more qualified man. She looked at Jessica, though Sarah doubted anyone else noticed. Those voices never went away entirely. Even now, people don't believe my service was real. They think women aren't capable of these things. But I'm standing here today as proof that they're wrong. Jennifer's voice grew stronger. "Young women in this audience, you can do anything you set your mind to. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Yes, it will be harder for you. Yes, people will doubt you. Yes, you'll have to work twice as hard for half the recognition. But you can do it. I did, and I'm nothing special. I'm just someone who refused to quit." The gymnasium erupted in applause. Students were on their feet cheering. Sarah saw tears on many faces. When the noise died down, Principal Harris took the microphone. "We have a surprise for you, Commander Mitchell. We've been in contact with your former commanding officer, Rear Admiral James Patterson. He wanted to be here today but couldn't make it. However, he sent this video message." The lights dimmed, and a large screen lowered from the ceiling. Admiral Patterson appeared, in uniform, sitting at a desk with an American flag behind him. "Commander Mitchell," he began, "I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person to honor you today. Your service to our nation was exemplary. You broke barriers, saved lives, and proved that courage has no gender. But more than that, you mentored the sailors who came after you. You showed them what excellence looks like." He paused, and his stern face softened. "Your daughter should be proud of you, not just for your medals or your achievements, but for your character. That's the real measure of a warrior." The video ended. Jennifer was openly crying now, tears streaming down her face. Sarah ran up and hugged her mother tight. But the surprises weren't over. From the back of the gymnasium, a side door opened. 6 men in military dress uniforms walked in, moving in formation. Sarah recognized them from photos. They were members of her mother's SEAL team, the men she'd served with for years. They marched to the front of the gymnasium and stood at attention in front of Jennifer. The leader, a tall man with gray hair and a chest full of medals, saluted sharply. "Commander Mitchell," he said in a voice that carried through the silent gym, We came to say what we should have said a long time ago. Thank you. Thank you for having our backs. Thank you for saving our lives. Thank you for being the kind of teammate everyone hopes for but few deserve." Jennifer returned the salute, her hand shaking. "It was my honor, sir." The 6 men broke formation and embraced her, one by one. The gymnasium exploded in applause again. People were standing, cheering, crying. Sarah looked over at Jessica and saw her standing with the others, clapping hard, tears running down her face. After the assembly, as people were filing out, Jessica approached Sarah. She looked nervous. "Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. Your mom is amazing and you deserved so much better than how I treated you." Sarah studied her for a moment. She could have been cruel. She could have rejected the apology. But her mother's words echoed in her mind. Real strength isn't about defeating enemies. It's about rising above them. "Thank you, Jessica. That means a lot. Do you think we could start over? Maybe be friends?" Sarah smiled. "Maybe. Let's start with not being enemies and see where it goes." Jessica nodded, relief flooding her face. She reached out tentatively and Sarah shook her hand. That evening, as Sarah and her mother drove home, Jennifer reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "You know what I'm most proud of?" Jennifer asked. "What?" "Not my medals, not my career. You. You're the bravest thing I ever did. You stood up for yourself with honor and grace. That's harder than anything I faced in combat." Sarah squeezed back. "I learned from the best, Mom." As they pulled into their driveway, Sarah looked at the modest house that was finally truly home. No more moving. No more proving themselves. Just a mother and daughter who'd fought their battles and won. But the real victory wasn't in the applause or the recognition. It was in the truth finally being heard. It was in the doors that would open a little wider for the next girl who dared to dream big. It was in the lesson that courage speaks louder than doubt. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is simply tell the truth and wait for the world to catch up.